George Washington effect on my hair here. Hello, Jacksonites, and welcome back to my Alien re-review series. This will be the final episode of this series, not counting the re-ranking video, where today, me and good old Trevor Boy,
howdy everybody,
will be having ourselves a double feature today with 1992's Alien 3, or Alien to the Third, and 1997's Alien Resurrection. Cliche, shitty title. So you might be wondering why another double feature. Because it's kind of similar to our Phantasm Oblivion and Ravager review, where one of them I have a lot to say about, and the other one, not so much. So I figure we'll just wrap these into one review. Yeah. Oh shit! I don't even have the plots up.
I think that about says it, is that there's really not a whole lot to say about one of these, but the other one has some more stuff to chew on.
We'll of course be starting with Alien 3. So what is, give us your personal history with 3 and Resurrection rolled into one. Trev.
Okay, so a lot of the experience with the first two Alien movies was kind of a shared experience with my dad. It was something that we bonded over. But he's not a fan of 3 and Resurrection, which, you know, there's a lot of people in the fandom, I guess, who would say that. So whenever I watched Alien 3, I believe I told this story in the Predator 2 review, but my mom had labeled a recorded tape for Alien 3 as Aliens 3, showing that she was definitely not a fan and just was kind of, writing stuff down. But anyway, yeah, this was a recorded tape. I think it was maybe recorded off of Encore back in the day. So like maybe in the 93 or somewhere around there, because it was like probably right after it came out, after its theatrical run in 92. But anyway, it was another one of those kind of slightly copy-guarded tapes, so it kind of had a reddish look to it, which is funny because the movie already has like a very brown and gold kind of color to it.
Aliens on Mars.
Yeah, it wasn't near as bad as Tremors on Mars. But still, it had that look to it. But I didn't mind because it's weird. So I can't remember how old I was. It wasn't long after the first two movies, which were bought tapes. But of course, I wanted to watch all the ones that we had available, which we actually happened to have all 4. But 3 and 4 were recorded from either off of Encore or Resurrection was pay-per-view. But yeah, I've always enjoyed, for whatever reason, watching Alien 3, in spite of some things that have proven problematic, as we'll get into here in a little bit. But yeah, it's always oddly resonated with me. It wasn't quite as, it's obviously not quite the same as the first two movies, but it still feels connected in a way, I guess you'd say. And this was one that I watched by myself, again, because my dad wasn't ever really a fan of these subsequent sequels, so this is one that I tended to enjoy by myself for the longest time. Resurrection, again, like I mentioned, was a pay-per-view recording, and unfortunately I found out that it would black out at certain points because of a poor satellite receiver. Excuse me. Yeah, but so I never really watched that tape very much because it blacked out at different points. Like it would lose picture and whatnot. So actually Resurrection was one that I would watch on TV a whole lot. And even then, during those initial viewings, this one never really clicked for me. I mean, there were things about it that I thought were kind of cool. Again, as we'll get into. But at the same time, it always kind of felt a little off to me. I mean, entertaining, but off in a way. So yeah, it's not a super duper long history for either one of the movies, but yeah, it's still fond memories for me watching that tape of Alien 3 or Aliens 3 as my mom wrote it.
Miss
and I, of course,
Thomson,
eventually got all four
come on
movies
now.
on DVD. What was that, Nick?
Miss Thomson, come on now.
Well, again, this is the same woman, and I'm not trying to throw my mom under the bus, but I totally am. She also thought that the Predators had dreadlocks because of the second movie dealing with Jamaicans, and it's like, no, Mom, had dreadlocks in the first one too. But I digress.
No, so, Mom, yeah, get cultured.
Exactly. But yeah, not a super. Again, it's hard to put into words the experience of watching these movies, aside from just like the initial sitting down to do it. But yeah, for the longest time, that tape for Alien 3 is what I would watch until I got the DVD. And Resurrection, I would just catch on TV here and there. Again, I'll just spoil it for everybody. It's my least favorite of the four movies.
Mine too.
Yeah, so anyway, yeah, not a whole lot to say. A lot more to say about the movies themselves, but yeah, the history there isn't super long. So take it away, Nick.
Well, I realized not too long ago that my origin for both Alien 3 and Resurrection happened around the same time. And actually, for Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection, they happened roughly around the same time. More so for 3 and Resurrection happened after the Aliens. But after my stepdad and my mom had been dating for a few months, his name's Eric, I'll just call him that. Eric decided he wanted to get me a gift. So he stopped by one time and he gave me a tape of Alien 3. And I looked at it and my mind was absolutely blown. I had no idea that there was a third movie. Because I just thought Aliens was the end of the series. I was like, okay, that's a wrap up of the series, that all the aliens are dead and they're just going to go home. But I didn't expect Alien 3. So I was like, oh my God, there's a third Alien movie. So the next day, because my mom, I've said this before, hates horror movies. She hates them with the burning passion. She kind of likes Shaun of the Dead, but mainly just because it's funny. But yeah, she does not like horror movies. But, of course, I still ended up watching Alien. Well, I attempted. Let me rephrase this. I attempted to watch Alien 3 because both me and Eric were sick, so we decided to stay home. Me stay home from school, and Mom was to go off to work. And I had my TV in the living room, so I wanted to sit down and try to watch Alien 3. Made it a half hour in before I was like, nah, I'm good. Now shut it off. I'll explain why. But then a couple months later, I finally sat down and I was like, I'll give it another try. So I did, and I watched through this was the theatrical cut, mind you. So I sat down and I watched Alien 3, and afterwards I was like, well, that was time well spent. And didn't really touch the movie again until after we moved, of course. But this will lead me into Alien Resurrection. Not long after that, on TV, lo and behold, what do I happen to find? Alien Resurrection. And that's when Eric told me, yeah, that's the fourth Alien movie. So like, how many of these movies are there? Just 4. Oh. Why didn't you tell me? You never asked. So I got up to the scene when Brad Dourif's trying, or I started when Brad Dourif was trying to make out with that one xenomorph, and then I watched it to the end of the movie, and I remember actually enjoying it quite a bit, partially because it just wiped the, at the time, really bad taste of Alien 3 out of my mouth. So it's like, okay, that wasn't bad. I enjoyed that. And then over the years, I would rewatch Alien 3, and there was a point in time where I must have watched it like 25 times over the course of a day and a half. I was like, okay, I'm actually kind of jibing with this movie right now. And then when my friend Grayson got the DVD version of the Alien anthology set, that of course had the assembly cut, and I'd heard of the assembly cut via James Rolfe for Sequelathon 2, and I said I would like to watch the extended cut of Alien 3. So he and I both sat down and checked it out, and I was actually kind of blown away. I was like, wow, this is a far superior film. And then I got the anthology set on Blu-ray, and I rewatched the assembly cut 10 to 15 times over the course of a couple weeks. I was, again, kind of really like, this is actually a decent movie. This is a pretty good one. Then last week, I rewatched Alien 3 for the first time in 6, 7 years. No, 5 or 6 years. And I still enjoy it, but some of that like bad taste in my mouth feeling from when I was younger definitely came back this most recent viewing. I was like, oh boy, yep, that's why I don't rewatch this one very much. And then Resurrection I would rewatch a couple times here and there. Eric bought me the DVD of Alien Resurrection as a gift a few years later after I watched Resurrection on TV, and I was like, oh, okay, thank you. And I would rewatch it and kind of enjoy it. Then I watched the alternate cut of Resurrection, which we're not really going to be discussing that much about the alternate cut of Resurrection, mostly just because there's not that much to say about it. But the assembly cut of Alien 3, that is the main one that we are going to be discussing. More on that in a minute.
And let me add, the assembly cut was something of a revelation whenever I first saw it, because I've always liked the movie. But suffice to say, the assembly cut most definitely improves on it a good share.
Oh, yes. Very much so. So, again, more on that in just a minute. And, of course, when I got the anthology set, I would rewatch Resurrection, and it would just relatively leave about the same taste in my mouth. That I was like, it's good. It's just there.
Yeah, it's there.
And that seems to be the general consensus. Well, not so much for Alien 3. Alien 3 is definitely the most divisive installment of the entire Alien series, even of the entire Alien versus Predator franchise. Aside from the Predator, I'd say Alien 3 is probably the most divisive. There are those which I'm pretty sure are the majority, not by a whole lot, but are the majority of people that just spit bile at Alien 3 and just say it's the worst of the whole series, which I see why, but I don't entirely agree. And then there are those that say it's the most underrated installment of the whole series, which I also see why. And to a lesser extent, I agree, but I also don't agree. And in terms of Alien Resurrection, the general consensus for that one is, it's there. It's just a very unremarkable movie, as I coined to Trev, which he wholeheartedly agrees with.
Yeah, it has something of a devoted following. Well, like any of these movies, I guess. Alien and Aliens, especially the second movie, are by far the most mainstream. These '90s offerings are, not as much of an acquired taste as Requiem was, I guess you'd say. But there still is that acquired taste thing going on. And I would say that the underrated crowd for Alien 3 has definitely grown as the years have gone on. But this movie kind of was, or Alien 3 kind of was, the last Jedi of its day, in a way. So, yeah, again, more on that as we continue.
There we go. So we're going to start off with Alien 3. Before we start on the plot, let's get into some of the production shit. Alien 3, a big reason why it's so infamous amongst the Alien fan base is the one that had the most troubled production. For starters, what I'm looking at here, there was not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, but eventually 7 different scripts written for this movie. From William Gibson to Eric Red to David Toohey to Vincent Ward to Walter Hill and David Giler. And then finally, we settled on David Fincher, whom this was his directorial debut, the guy who would go on to direct Seven. And yeah, poor David Fincher, he was brought in late into the production. They started shooting without a completed script. And the studio interfered with a lot of Fincher's decisions. And eventually, hasn't David Fincher, kind of disowned this movie?
Yes, and it's mainly due to his experience making it, at least mainly on the studio side of things, because there are pictures of him with Sigourney Weaver and the effects guys where he looks happy, and some of the other actors and whatnot. So it wasn't the crew or the cast that he had a problem with, obviously, because
well, Sigourney Weaver looks like one of those gals that's very easy to get along with.
Yeah, I still think that he was able to get something out of this situation, or get some good performances from his actors for the most part. In spite of this, it was mainly what the studio was putting pressure on him for, in terms of I guess deadlines to meet or suggestions and whatnot. Talking about those scripts, the final script, I do believe, or at least the story, whenever you're looking at the credits, is credited to Vincent Ward. And his main contribution, because his original idea was supposed to be a wooden planet with monks. And it seems like the religious aspect of his script is what was retained in the final product. But Pitch Black guy, how do you say his last name?
Who?
David Toohey?
Oh, yeah, David Toohey.
Yeah, which I'll actually bring up an interesting comparison whenever we do our ranking video when it comes to one of the Alien movies. It was something that dawned on me after all these conversations. But his script was the one where the prison element came from, although the actual script that he had, it's actually a lot like the movie Lockdown with Guy Pearce, or at least that's what it sounded like to me, with a prison floating above a planet. Can't remember if it was Earth or not. But anyway, so basically they took the prison element of his script and applied it to the wooden planet one from Vincent Ward's. I don't think there was anything from the Eric Red script that was retained. I could be wrong. The William Gibson script probably would have gone over the best, especially with fans of Aliens. It's actually turned into a very popular audio drama.
Yeah, in 2019, that script was turned into a... hang on one sec. There's an article here, or like a segment.
There's a comic book adaptation, but there's also
Audible. In 2018 through 2019, Dark Horse released William Gibson's Alien 3, a 5-part comic adaptation of Gibson's unproduced screenplay, illustrated and adapted by Johnny Christmas and colored by Tamara Bonvillain. And also in 2019, Audible released an audio drama of Gibson's script, adapted by Dirk Maggs, and with Michael Biehn and Lance Henriksen reprising their roles. And it also had music done by James Hannigan. When I get my freaking Audible account what's the word? Reapplied. I need to check that out. Wonder how long it is.
Yeah, I either want to check that out or pick up the comic book adaptation and go through it. But yeah, apparently Rennie Harlan, who I believe, didn't he direct one of the Die Hards?
He might have done 2.
I know he did not. Yeah, he did Nightmare on Elm Street 4. That was his debut, I believe.
And then he also went on to direct one of my favorite action movies of all time, The Long Kiss Goodnight.
Yes, that too. Deep Blue Sea.
Love that movie.
Later on. Anyway, he was attached to direct the William Gibson script at one point.
Which that would have been cool.
Obviously, that didn't. Yeah, that would have been, an interesting what if for sure. The Eric Red script was the one where they actually brought the xenomorphs to Earth. And it actually involved, this is giving me some Requiem flashbacks. It was a small town setting, had a small town setting, but it was in a biodome. Oh, wait, no, it was a biodome in space, but inside was like a small town for like a U.S. city. I remember reading about this. Yeah, this was like really far out there. And I mentioned the David Toohey script and the Vincent Ward. Vincent Ward ended up still being credited. So yeah, anyway, lots of scripts. David Fincher was actually rewriting parts of whatever script they were using whenever they were filming the movie. So even then, the movie took on its own identity separate from these different starting points, these different seeds that never fully sprouted, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, and it was just a total mess behind the scenes. And the theatrical cut was released May 22nd, 1992, with a budget of $50 to $60 million, and it made $159.8 million. I think it was considered an underperformer. However, in 2003, a revised version of the film, known as the Assembly Cut, was released without Fincher's involvement, and this version of the movie received a much warmer reception to Alien fans, rightfully so, despite the fact that Fincher wasn't involved, which I don't know why. The Assembly Cut definitely is way better than the theatrical cut. It actually turns a movie into, okay, this is actually a pretty decent film. It kind of reminds me of the whole Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers fiasco, just in the opposite order, where the producer's cut is the shittier of the two and the theatrical cut is the better of the two. In this one, the assembly version is definitely the better version of the film.
Yeah, that's actually a good comparison because
I almost
one thing,
wanted to
these movies are
say
both.
it's like a horror version of Justice League, but nothing will ever be that drastic of differences. Like, oof.
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess you'd say that. But that's also the freshest and most recent in terms of this long history of this happening in Hollywood, unfortunately. But yeah, David Fincher wasn't involved in the assembly cut because, for one thing, he just doesn't want anything to do with the movie ever again. It seems like, unfortunately, that's how bad the experience of making it was for him, at least in terms of his experience with the studio. And I'm sure he would have to have, been in contact with the studio if he was going to try and piece together a quote unquote director's cut. Because really, I think he feels that this movie isn't really his own anyway, even though he imbues it with his own style and
Very
some
much
things that he
so.
would actually carry on through the rest of his career. But yeah, it's funny you brought up Halloween 6 because both these movies are very 90s in terms of their aesthetic.
Yep.
At least in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, there's actually a really it's well received. It's a documentary on the DVD and Blu-ray that goes through the whole history. But it's quite an interesting dive in. It's quite a deep rabbit hole you can go down, and it's very enlightening, but also kind of miraculous that something somewhat decent still came out of it.
And there's not really much production stuff to know for Alien Resurrection. Just Fox wanted another sequel to make more money, and they hired Joss Whedon to write it, and there you go. There's Alien Resurrection.
Well, one more thing to note about Resurrection is apparently Joss Whedon also has kind of a similar attitude to David Fincher, only in this case, he's only the writer. And, he just, there's always been this kind of thing with some screenwriters in Hollywood where they say, oh, it didn't even come close to what I wrote. And I think that's just sometimes in response to a movie not like being a smash hit or anything. Anytime something is criticized, somebody tries to find a way to throw somebody under the bus. And in this case,
you like that phrase, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's the only other thing I would know, and it's kind of a similarity between the two movies is that some creators have just owned the products, the final products. Excuse me.
Alrighty. Okay, so yeah, let's get to the plot of Alien 3, shall we?
Yes, indeed.
Following the events of Aliens, which is presumably like not even a year after the events of the previous movie, a fire starts aboard the Colonial Marine spaceship Sulaco. The computer launches an escape pod containing EEV, as it's called, Emergency Escape Vehicle or Vessel, containing Ellen Ripley, the young girl Newt, Hicks, and the damaged android Bishop. All four are in cryonic stasis. Scans of the crew's cryotubes show a queen facehugger attached to one member. The pod crash lands on Fury 161, a foundry and maximum security double Y chromosome work correctional facility. Rolls right off your tongue. Inhabited by male inmates with a genetic mutation which gives the afflicted individual a predisposition for antisocial behavior. Huh?
That makes sense.
The inmates recover the crashed pod and its passengers. The same facehugger is seen approaching inmate Thomas Murphy's dog, Spike. In the assembly cut, which is the better version, the queen facehugger just attaches itself to an ox. Ripley is awakened by Clemens, played by Charles Dance, the chief medical officer of the prison, who informs her that she is the sole survivor. She is warned by the prison warden Harold Andrews that her presence may have disruptive effects. Ripley insists that Clemens perform an autopsy on Newt and that her and Hicks' bodies be subsequently burned, secretly fearing that Newt may be carrying an alien embryo. Despite protests from the warden and his assistant Aaron, the autopsy is conducted and no embryo is found. The funeral proceeds in the foundry, attended by the prisoners and presided over by Andrews, with Dylan delivering a speech for the deceased as their bodies are dropped into the furnace. Elsewhere in the prison, a quadrupedal alien bursts from Spike, disturbingly so, though in just more gory, nasty fashion in the assembly cut, just from a dead ox, which I prefer. After shaving her head, looking like a cancer patient, as Meadow says, Ripley finds the damaged bishop in the prison's garbage dump. Just as she is leaving the area, though, she is cornered by 4 inmates and almost raped. After being saved by inmate leader Dylan, Ripley returns to the infirmary and reactivates Bishop, who, before asking to be permanently shut down, confirms that a facehugger came with them to Fiorina in the escape pod. Growing to full size, the alien kills Murphy, Boggs, and Rains and returns outcast prisoner Golic to his previously psychopathic state and dubs the creature the Dragon, though this is more expanded upon in the assembly cut. Ripley informs Andrews of her previous encounter with the Xenos and suggests everyone work together to hunt down and kill it. The highly skeptical Andrews does not believe her story and explains that even if she were telling the truth, the facility is without weapons. Their only hope is the rescue ship being sent for Ripley by the Weyland-Yutani Corporation. The alien ambushes Ripley and Clemens in the prison infirmary, killing him, and almost slays Ripley, but then spares her and retreats. Ripley then rushes to the cafeteria to warn the others. Andrews insists she is delusional and orders Aaron to take her back to the infirmary, but the warden himself is dragged into the vents and killed by the monster. Ripley assumes command of the entire group, rallying the inmates, and proposes they pour flammable toxic waste into the ventilation system to ignite it and flush out the alien. However, its intervention causes a premature explosion, which technically does work in flushing the alien out and trapping it in a toxic waste container. But several inmates are killed because this plan goes totally tits up. With Aaron's help, Ripley scans herself using the escape pod's medical equipment and discovers that not only is she carrying a chest burster, she's carrying the embryo of an alien queen, which explains why the alien did not slay her. She also discovers that Weyland-Yutani hopes to turn the aliens into biological weapons. Man, they just cannot fucking let it go, can they? Deducing that the alien will not kill her because of the embryo she carries, Ripley begs Dylan to kill her. He agrees only if she helps the inmates kill the alien first. They form a plan to lure the alien into the foundry's molding facility and trap it via a series of closing doors and drown it in molten lead. The bait and chase plan, which is probably the best scene in the entire movie, results in the deaths of all the remaining prisoners except Dylan and Morse. But then Dylan sacrifices himself to position the alien towards the mold as Morse pours the molten lead onto them. Although the alien is covered in molten metal, it escapes the mold, but Ripley activates the fire sprinklers, causing its molten metal exoskeleton to cool rapidly and shatter. Okay, so that is how it's destroyed. All right. I could never figure out how the hell is this thing killed in the very end, blowing the alien to pieces in a pretty awesome effect. The Weyland-Yutani team arrives, including scientists, heavily armed commandos, and a man who looks identical to Bishop, who explains that he is Bishop's creator. He tries to persuade Ripley to undergo surgery to remove the alien queen embryo, which he claims will be destroyed. Smelling bullshit, Ripley refuses and steps back onto the mobile platform, which Morse positions over the furnace. The commandos shoot Morse in the leg in an attempt to stop him. Aaron, believing the Bishop lookalike is an android, strikes him with a wrench and is shot by the commandos, killing him in the process. Ignoring Bishop's pleas to give them the embryo, Ripley throws herself into the furnace, killing herself just as the infant queen erupts from her, holding it to her chest like her own infant. However, in the assembly cut, the queen never shoots out. The facilities are closed down. Morse, the sole survivor, is led away as Ripley's final logbook recording from the Nostromo plays in the EEV, thus ending the movie, and if you want, end the entire series. And to quote James Rolfe, it's an epic scene that almost redeems the movie for me.
Yeah, it is something that I like about this movie, and why I second the whole idea that, for me anyway, this is the last of the original Alien trilogy, and I kind of wish it had stayed that way, in spite of some things that I like about Resurrection. More on that soon. Yeah, this just feels like the last classic Alien movie to me. I mean, this plot, there are some things which I'll just go ahead and say, nothing in this movie really bothers me enough to where I will consider it a con. But I know Nick has some cons, so he'll elaborate again here shortly.
Yep.
There are definitely some things, to say the least, that people are not going to be on board with. Some people aren't, hence why it's a polarizing entry, probably the most polarizing entry in the series. But then for some other people, and I guess I fall into this category, given the nature of the monster of this series, the xenomorph, which is quite horrific, I don't know, this always just felt like, yeah, this seems like this makes sense. If you don't end it with aliens, that's another thing. With these first three movies, and I emphasize these first three movies because Resurrection unfortunately starts a trend of cliffhangers. With these first three movies, each of them wrap up their individual plots. So if you are one of those people who doesn't like any of the sequels to Alien, it is a good one-off. If you like Aliens, it has, well, even like Nick said earlier, he thought it was the end of the series, and it does definitely give that impression in terms of a satisfying one, or a more probably mainstream appealing one, I guess you would say. And then even this movie, even though it is quite dour in many respects, again, there's a great sense of finality to everything. It's a bit sad that Ripley's transmission from the first movie didn't reach this area, or we don't even know if it's just this area or just in general. It didn't seem to reach anybody until this point in time, because in Aliens, she is just found randomly. Nobody got her transmission, as far as I remember anyway. If I'm wrong, correct me, Nick. But I do believe, yes, she was just found randomly in Aliens.
Yes.
So yeah, it is quite. Really, this movie, the word, another word that comes to mind is that, and from this plot as well, is that it's quite melancholy.
To say the least.
To say the least, the best comparison I can make, Nick, And I'll just go ahead and say, even though I have listed things for pros and whatnot, it's kind of hard to describe the way this movie makes me feel. It's definitely a feeling or mood piece for sure.
Very much
it's
so.
Always just continuous. Yeah, it's always just continuously been fine for me, in spite of the very dark turns that it takes. Excuse me, I'm taking a drink there. I lost my train of thought. Sorry. No, finality just, I don't know. It makes sense to me. You go ahead and give your piece, Nick, and see if I can remember that one thought that escaped me.
So my initial thoughts for Alien 3, it is very much a mood piece. You really have to be in a massive alien mood to watch Alien 3. I don't see anybody just popping on Alien 3 casually because of how bleak and dark and depressing and sad this movie is. It's just such a... To quote James Rolfe, I couldn't even stand to watch this movie the first time I saw it. It was so depressing that I almost wanted to blow my brains out. I'm just like, fuck. After all the shit that these characters go through in Aliens, you'd think they'd finally get a break, but not even a year later, in the context of the story, 3 are dead, and Ripley has to say goodbye to her surrogate family, and she herself has to kill herself in order for the sake of the rest of the universe to be free from the greedy Weyland-Yutani Corporation. Like, geez. Talk about a sad, shitty-ass life for these characters. Like, damn. But I've come to appreciate the film's somber tone. And yes, I do agree in some ways it is a good double bill to watch with Aliens. And I do like that it does have kind of a full circle feel to it, with Ripley sacrificing herself for the good of the universe. But still, just fuck me. It's sad, depressing, bleak, dark.
Hey, I remembered my thought. I'm glad I handed it off to you. The way Nick feels about Logan is how I feel about Alien 3, and based on how this review is going, vice versa in terms of how I feel about Logan. But I don't hate that movie by any means, and it definitely has its moments and undeniable qualities. But yeah, that's the main thing that occurs to me, is that the way that you talked about Logan, for whatever reason, that's how I feel about Alien 3. It just feels right. Or I'm more willing to accept the decisions that they made. And I should also point out, Ripley's death isn't just something where they thought, oh, let's end the series. Because I'm sure, well, I mean, Fox did end up making another movie, as we're going to be discussing. But really, the main reason, Sigourney Weaver has actually been kind of, I guess not notorious, but if you look into it, you find out that she's been reluctant to come back each and every time for an Alien sequel.
Yep.
She was like that. She was like that for Aliens. She was like that for this. And the reason why she was killed off is because she feared, she, along with James Cameron and Ridley Scott, apparently really abhorred the idea of Alien versus Predator, unfortunately.
Why?
Well, I think, and actually there's a direct quote from Sigourney. She was afraid, here we go. In her words, I felt that Ripley was going to become a burden to the story. There are only so many aspects to that character you can do. She also said, something about where she didn't want to end up being that character who just pops up to fight monsters continuously.
Why not? What's the word? What's wrong with that? That's fun.
Well, yeah, for us viewers, but actors occasionally have some interesting takes on their work. But anyway, yeah, that last thing was the gist of what she said. But that's what she was afraid of, is that she would become that character who would just show up and blow up shit. So I guess in a way, the final products of how Alien 3 and Resurrection turned out, whatever was odd or different about how Ripley was used in those movies, is something that is pretty much guaranteed why Sigourney signed on in the end, because it seems like if she had continuously just been Ripley from the second movie, she would have lost interest real quick. It should also be noted that David Giler and Walter Hill wrote a treatment for Alien 5 in recent years, and she has done, Sigourney Weaver has done the same thing and said that she's not interested, saying that Ripley deserves a rest. So that, again, it seems like some people don't ever change their tunes.
Well, I know that there has been another script that was written not in recent years where holy shit, she got paid $11 million for this movie. Oh wait, no, that's for Resurrection. Never mind. Excuse me.
Speaking of which, okay, this is why I couldn't find it, Nick, because it wasn't on the Alien 3 page. It was actually on the Resurrection page. Sigourney Weaver said she wanted to liberate the character in Alien 3, as she did not want Ripley to become a figure of fun, which you actually kind of summed that up a little while ago. A figure of fun who would continuously wake up with monsters running around. So yeah, that was her quote. Anyway, continue. Which is a shame, because why not be an action star or an action hero? Because she is anyway. She's considered one of the all-time iconic greats.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of unfortunate to hear that she wasn't really on board with that. But no, I think you were talking about there's the Neil Blomkamp concept, which I don't think actually ever made it to a script phase. It was just concept art and a treatment. But the script that I was mentioning from David Giler and Walter Hill, it sounds like they want, based on some of the quotes that they put on the first page for the script. I think they quote the tagline from the original Alien, and then they say, "In space, no one can hear you dream." So I think that implies that they would do a whole big retcon where 3 and Resurrection were a dream. That seems to be the implication. But again, we don't know anything, because it seems like until they're pretty sure this isn't going to be made, they're going to keep it tight-lipped. And I shouldn't say they, because David Giler is actually deceased. Walter Hill is the one who's not elaborating at this point in time.
And I guess now that Disney has the Alien series, now there's future Alien projects on the way. So maybe they'll finally pull a Star Wars Episode 7 with Sigourney Weaver and get her back.
Yeah, one more note on that. It seems like the current state of things is that they're really just trying to figure out what they're going to do next. Whether that be something else with Ridley Scott or one of these other scripts that's floating around, I guess we'll see.
Nah, yeah, keep it away from Ridley Scott. Just let him do what he's doing with Raised by Wolves.
Yeah, I actually agree, and I've been brainstorming something about what I think they should do or wish they would do. But more on that at a future point in time, hopefully soon.
So let's get into the plot of Alien Resurrection, because this won't take long.
Oh, yeah, there we go. Sorry, let's continue.
In 2379, 200 years after the events of Alien 3, which, let's try to do the math. 2379. So
79.
And then Hang on, I gotta do the math. So let's say Aliens takes place in 2178.
Mm-hmm.
So we can say the original Alien takes place in 2121.
Yeah, I've actually think I've heard that date floating around for that year in the fandom.
200 years after the events of Alien 3, United Systems military scientists on the spaceship vessel USM Auriga creates a clone of Ellen Ripley, designated as Ripley 8, using DNA from blood samples taken before her death. There's a retcon if I ever heard one. The xenomorph queen's DNA has been combined with Ripley's, so the clone grows up with an alien embryo inside of it. The scientists extract the embryo, raise it, and collect its eggs while keeping Ripley 8 alive for further study. As a result of the xenomorph's DNA inside her, the clone has enhanced strength and reflexes, somewhat acidic blood, and a psychic link with the xenomorphs. Additionally, the xenomorph's genetic memory allows the clone to have some of Ripley's memories. A group of mercenaries consisting of the weirdest fucking names I've ever heard for any cast of characters in a fucking movie. Elgin, Johnner, played by Ron Perlman, yes. Christie, a man. Vries, French. Hillard, a woman. And Call, played by Winona Ryder, arrives at Auriga on their ship, the Betty. They deliver several kidnapped humans in stasis, and the military scientists use the humans as hosts for the aliens, raising several adult xenomorphs for study. Does this sound like a good idea? The Betty crew soon encounters Ripley 8, Anna Lee Call, weird fucking names, recognizes her name and tries to kill her, suspecting that Ripley 8 may be used to create xenomorphs, but the creatures have already been cloned. The now mature xenomorphs, being aware of their blood's acidic properties from the aforementioned genetic memory, escape confinement by killing off one of their own to use its acidic blood to burn through their enclosures. They then capture Dr. Jonathan Gettiman, played by Chucky, Brad Dourif, and kill a second scientist. They damage the Auriga and kill some of those people who failed to evacuate, including General Perez, who's probably the most annoying character in this movie, as well as Elgin, impaling him right through the spine with a head bite. Another crew member is captured and cocooned for egg morphing. Military scientist Dr. Wren reveals that the ship's default command in an emergency is to return to Earth, realizing that this will unleash the xenomorphs on Earth. Ripley 8, the mercenaries, Wren, a Marine named DeStefano. Weird names. I'll just call him Stephen. And surviving xenomorph host Purvis. Why? Decide to head for the Betty and use it to destroy the Auriga. Along the way, Ripley discovers a laboratory containing the grotesque results of the previous 7 failed attempts to clone Ellen Ripley, which is definitely the most disturbing and most difficult scene to watch in the whole movie. The surviving one begs Ripley to euthanize her. She complies and then incinerates the lab and its contents. What, Trev?
No, I just said absolutely on it being the most disturbing scene in the movie.
As the group makes their way through the damaged ship, they swim through a flooded kitchen. They are chased by 2 xenomorphs. One is killed while the other snatches Hillard. Good riddance. As they escape the kitchen, the xenomorph returns and blinds Christy. Is that what happens to him? Because I always thought this was pointless. Who sacrifices himself?
Since,
what?
Yeah. No, especially since he why blind him if he's just gonna kill himself immediately after?
Well, I never got the sense that he was blind. I just got the sense that, okay, I'm just gonna give up. Who sacrifices himself to kill the xenomorph so the others can escape. After Ren betrays the group, Call is revealed to be an auton, an improvised version of a human created by synthetics, or improved version, of a human created by synthetics. Using her ability to interface with the Auriga's systems, Call sets it on a collision course with Earth, hoping to destroy the xenomorphs in the crash. She cuts off Ren's escape route and directs the xenomorphs towards him. Ripley is captured by a xenomorph while the others head for the Betty. Ren, who is already aboard, shoots Purvis, takes Call hostage, and demands that he abort the collision. An injured Purvis attacks Ren and forces Ren's head to his chest just as the xenomorph embryo that he is carrying bursts through his ribcage, causing it to go through Ren's head too, killing them both. The survivors shoot and kill the juvenile xenomorph, which is one of the most what the fuck moments of the entire series. This is where the movie loses me. Ripley is taken to the alien nest where she finds Gediman, still alive, using his Chucky voice and is still partially cocooned. The alien queen, having developed an actual uterus as a result of her genetic contamination with Ripley, gives birth to a xenomorph with overtly human traits. I can't remember what this one's called.
The newborn.
Okay, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Unable to bond with the queen, the hybrid xenomorph recognizes Ripley 8 as its mother, so it kills the alien queen and Gediman by biting his head off, literally. Ripley 8 takes advantage of the distraction to escape and makes her way to the Betty. Oh, here it is. Yeah, the newborn alien reaches the Betty and attacks Call, killing Steven when he tries to help her. And Ripley finds her way onto the ship and saves Call by distracting the hybrid. Using her acidic blood, Ripley 8 melts a hole in a window and pushes the hybrid towards it. The decompression violently blows the creature through the hole and out into space, killing it as Ripley tearfully watches on. Me as well, as watching this incredibly disturbing scene caused me to bawl my fucking eyes out.
It's pretty fucked up.
The countdown on the Auriga continues as the survivors escape in the Betty. Wait, wouldn't this thing have acidic blood too? Whatever. I'm not even gonna ask about that. I don't like thinking about that scene. The Auriga collides with Earth, causing a large explosion. As they look down at Earth, Call asks what Ripley wants to do next, and she replies with, "I don't know. I'm a stranger here myself." Thus ending the series on a pretty massive cliffhanger that will probably never, ever, ever get resolved. Fuck!
Well.
Not counting comics.
Follow-up in comic book form. It's Aliens versus Predator versus Terminator. They actually follow Alien Resurrection. So anybody who happens to, be curious can check that out. I don't remember the exact details myself, but I remember it sounding a bit batshit. So after going through this synopsis, I'm just going to go ahead and say that
this feels like Alien fan fiction.
It feels like what?
Alien fan fiction.
Yeah, and also you brought up those disturbing moments. The two moments in this that are really disturbing are far more disturbing than anything that you might find in Alien 3. And I think a big thing that puts me off about it, and I'll bring this up again when I talk about it a little bit in my cons, is the fact that the tone just doesn't seem consistent. 1 minute, yeah, I'll just go ahead and say it. 1 minute, Ron Perlman's shooting a spider with a gun. Which is fucking hilarious. And then the next we have like the newborn being vacuumed out into space through a hole in the, and then or the room of clones, failed clones. Honestly, two very, in my opinion, I agree with Nick, hard scenes to sit through, especially given that clashing tone. And that's one thing that Alien 3 has over this, is that its tone is consistent.
True, yeah. Keep talking for a minute. I gotta go take a whiz.
Okay. So, yeah, Alien 3 might be bleak, but at least it's consistently so, and even then it has some subtle humor to it that I find amusing, or that it works. The humor in Resurrection works too. Again, just really the main thing I can say is that the tone just seems inconsistent. And, yeah, really, it's just kind of like a very cartoony. I've heard this movie kind of described as like adult Looney Tunes or something to that effect. It's super campy, but also ultra violent. I don't know if it's probably has something to do with the sensibilities of the director. Not to be offensive, but he is a Frenchman. I mean, people have said that before, jokingly. Maybe I'm guessing Whedon probably has the humor contributions here. But yeah, I don't know what else to say until we elaborate. I'm not going to have a whole lot of pros or cons because I lump a lot of things under one umbrella.
Okay, I'm back.
War free. Yeah, there we go. I was trying to vamp for you.
All right, so before we begin, a word from our sponsor. Alrighty, so shall we begin our pros for Alien 3?
Yes, sir. And I'm not gonna be too long because I think you have more than me. Although I did add one as we were reading stuff. So now I have 7 pros, and again, I don't have any cons. So my pro number 1 is Ripley. Now, do you mind if I just go ahead and say what you thought about her performance in this, Nick?
Yeah, go ahead, because I'll probably just add more to it.
Yeah, because, Nick told me off camera before we started recording that he feels that Sigourney at this point was starting to phone it in terms of her acting with the character. I definitely feel that for Resurrection.
There too, yes.
With this though, I think it's more of a takeaway from the tone of the movie. It's a lot more easier to have fun with the role whenever it's, aliens.
Yes.
Because, that movie has more fun with itself. But even then, there's still some gravitas and some, trauma going on there, as we discussed before. But yeah, I just feel like this is really Ripley's last stand, and I think the way the way Sigourney Weaver conveys survivor's guilt, is quite emotional. I think
that's an interesting way to look at it.
Well, I think there's some reviews or essays that have talked about it in years since that I like, that have brought it up. And survivor's guilt seems to be a term that's thrown around a lot. And I think she definitely feels that, especially early on. And I actually, now that I think about it, that actually kind of contributes to her final decision. Is that how can she survive, after all? Well, it's like you said earlier, Nick. how could she live with surviving after everything that they had gone through? And yeah, I mean, again, I think, yeah, I've already mentioned this. It's hard to describe how this movie makes me feel. I just feel it. And I think that this is the last time where, even if she's starting to wane in terms of her investment, probably because of how she fears things were going with the franchise in general, which it's a shame that she felt that way because,
Yeah.
as me and Nick discussed, even if those movies have their flaws, Alien versus Predator is an awesome concept, which honestly makes sense and is probably the most fruitful in terms of directions you can go with either franchise, given what they've tried to do aside from AVP.
Yep.
But again, that's a whole other discussion in itself. But yeah, I still think that Sigourney's a good enough actress to where, again, even if things are waning in terms of her investment,
she's still professional and she still gives a good performance.
Yeah, and she just, yeah, I feel like she still does a pretty damn good job. I mean, it's not obviously at the level of Aliens, because she got a nomination for that. But I mean, still it works. Ripley's kind of the heart and soul of these movies, all four, if you want to include all four. So yeah, if she, are you still there, Nick?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, I just heard a noise. Sorry.
I just got an email.
So if you're not invested in what's going on with Ripley, really none of these movies will work. So it's important that, she's still probably, again, she's my first pro here. She's probably the main highlight of the movie. It's and I've brought this up before with our Dark Fate review. And again, that has its fair share of similarities, as it turns out with this. It depends really on your investment on where the characters of Ripley or Sarah Connor in that case are going, in terms of whether or not you're going to follow along with this. So yeah, she's the undeniable highlight for me. Pro number two is Mr. Clemens.
Love him.
If you asked me what my favorite Charles Dance performance was, I'm not going to be like all the young kids nowadays and bring up Game of Thrones. I'm probably going to say Mr. Clemens because he has always been a standout for me in this movie. Mainly because he's kind of a follow-up to Hicks, in the fact that he's a sympathetic character, or sympathetic to the main character's plight and what she's been through. And this will kind of factor into the cons, I'm sure, is the fact that unfortunately he's not as well informed as Hicks was of what is going on. But he still made it to third base, unlike Hicks. No, I'm just kidding.
Woohoo! Oh my God! Let me just say this: as much as I love like their chemistry, them boning totally comes out of nowhere.
Well, one of my favorite little moments between them, and it's also in its full length in the assembly cut, is whenever like he's explaining how the prisoners found religion, basically, and they kind of subtly make fun of it. I mean, they don't say much, but you can tell they're just kind of like, yeah, that's interesting. I like how whenever they're talking with each other, basically, and Clemens even says this later on, Ripley deflects his questions in the best possible way, of course.
In the nicest possible way, of course.
The nicest possible way, yeah. But still, they have like a little moment where she says, I've been out here a long time. And then in the assembly cut, because I watched both cuts back to back before we did the review today, so I noticed most of the differences. And in the assembly cut, Clemens goes, "So have I." So you get needs if you've been out in space for a long time and you haven't been getting any, I guess. It actually kind of reminds me of Reggie in Phantasm because he's always talking about, it's hard being on the road.
It's hard on the road.
I guess. I guess if you're a horn dog, it certainly is.
No, that scene
yeah,
actually didn't really sit well with me because A, it's kind of cringy. B, it just comes out of nowhere. But also C, okay, like this is where we're going. It just felt a little forced. I would have much rather they like because that's one thing they do in the theatrical cut where it's well, it is physical a little bit, but it doesn't feel. It just felt a little bit more forced in the assembly cut. Like all of a sudden she says, "You attracted to me?" It's like, oh, okay, so we're going there. All right, cool.
Yeah, but it's like I said though. She's he's what they're doing throughout the movie. As long as they're both in the movie together, what they're doing is constantly kind of deflecting each other's dogged pursuit of information. He wants to know
slightly
what she really
annoyingly
thinks
so.
is going on. Yeah, and see, I guess for me, they have enough chemistry where it's kind of charming. I like their little bits of banter back and forth. Like I like wherever she says that I've fraternized with a prisoner, blah blah blah, and he acts all surprised, or he pretends to be surprised, and he says, it's like that's unadvisable or something to that effect. It's just funny. It's kind of cute to me, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, a little bit.
So again, it's like you said, it either comes out of left field, it comes out of left field for some audience members, or it works, and I guess I'm just in can't be. And again, just hearing you kind of try to place your finger on how you feel about it is kind of hard to put into words the way this movie makes you feel sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's like you have a pretty good idea, but then you kind of can't. It's just you experience it while you're watching it, and that's both in good and bad terms. So yeah, I mean, I'll just go ahead and bring up the one thing I don't like about Clemens is the fact that he doesn't make it through to the end, and
Sadly.
he just has no idea. Yeah, he just has no idea what happens to him. I mean, the runner, as the xenomorph in this movie is called, just appears behind him and gives him an inner jaw to the forehead. It's just like, man, that's just messed up. But you could say that about a lot of things in the movie. But still,
to say the least.
Yeah. To wrap up on Clemens, definitely the second highlight for me. I don't know why. I guess Charles Dance is just a compelling enough actor. I wish he had been used more in King of the Monsters, especially given some of his other things in his body of work. But again, that's another conversation for another day.
Yep.
Yeah, even though I don't like his fate, I still really like Mr. Clemens, again, because I guess he kind of is the replacement or the substitute for Hicks, and I think he does a good job in that regard.
Even though I get the sense that he's at least 10 years older than Ripley.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I think Charles Dance and Sigourney Weaver are actually around the same age. But I don't know. That would be, actors don't necessarily have to be the same age as their characters.
True.
So, yeah. All right, pro number 3 for me is Mr. Dillon. And I think...
I like Dillon.
The main thing, well, of course he has I guess you could say the black man attitude. He's the badass of this movie, aside from Ripley herself. But, well, because Ripley is somewhat or more subdued than she is in the previous 2 movies, Dillon kind of steps up to the plate to be that go-get-'em
badass. He reminds me of Parker from the first movie.
Yeah, exactly, but in a more positive light, because really there's nothing annoying about Dillon. In fact, there's something kind of humble about him in the fact that when he first meets Ripley, he basically gives her a warning that, you don't want to hang around me.
Hey, you don't really want to know me.
I also
I'm a murderer and rapist of women. The way he says murderer is exactly like that. Murderer. Like, was he trying to be funny, or was that like a a flub in his dialogue, and they just kept it in the movie.
I don't know. I think it's probably just an inflection of the actor, because I think he also does that in Mimic and some other stuff that I've seen him in.
He's a Mimic?
But there's a real, yeah, he's I think he's the cop in Mimic that is stuck down there in the subway with them.
Never seen those movies.
Mimic?
Yeah, I've never seen him.
Oh, well, I recommend the first one. I've never seen the other ones, but yeah, I definitely recommend the first Mimic. He's very good in that too, in my opinion. But no, whenever he first meets Ripley, there's a nice little moment. Actually, it kind of shows that the characters are pretty much evenly matched. Is that after he says that line that Nick just said, she says, "Well, then I must make you nervous," but she doesn't go and sit somewhere else. She just sits down right there in the middle of everybody, and that's basically her saying, "I'm not afraid of you guys. Bring it on." That's the way I interpret it, anyway.
Passive aggressive.
Yeah, again, it's funny because, Dylan's like, okay then, because he takes off his glasses and is kind of in disbelief that she did that. But no, anyway, what's kind of emotionally resonant for me about Dylan is the fact that he says that, yet he's the one who saves Ripley.
Yeah, he looks out for her for the rest of the movie. Well, not for the... Nah, he does look after her for the rest of the movie, just more and more as the film goes on. But starting with a bang, of course, by saving her from the four dudes.
Yeah, exactly. So that goes against the rapist thing. And then whenever Ripley, asks him to, kill her so that she doesn't have to endure the chest bursting, he can't do it. So that's another tally against what he said he was. He's not a murderer either. So it's just, that comes across to me as like, he's kind of humble.
You're in the bathroom.
What was that?
You're in the bathroom.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I can hear the echo in the goddamn bathroom, boy, as you speak. So if you have to do something, by all means, mute yourself, because I actually we have the first three pros as well. So I'm going to talk about these characters as well. So do your thing. Okay, so my first three pros for Alien 3 are also Ripley, Clemens, and Dylan. I do think that Ripley is, at this point, starting to phone it in. I find it funny that her being just, I'll only do a script if I like it type of attitude. She agreed to do this movie with it being as bleak and depressing and dark as in killing off Newt in the first 5 fucking minutes. I'm amazed that she agreed to this, but regardless, I do get the sense that at times she is kind of phoning it in, her being a lot more subdued throughout the film. We don't get those angry Ripley moments or the badass Ripley moments, at least not nearly as much as the first two. Here, she just looks tired and kind of just phoning it in, and quite honestly, she looks bored sometimes. But she does have her moments when she's good, like the ending. She is good in the ending. I don't know what you're talking about. And her chemistry with Clemens is also very good. We'll talk about him in just a minute. And his chemistry just with the prisoners who are willing to work with her, her chemistry with them is really good too. Before they begin to try to flush the alien out of the pipes plan, Dylan's like, "So you want help from us prisoners? Why should I put my ass on the line? Your ass is already on the line. And the question is, what are you going to do about it?" She's also a bit more sarcastic in this movie too, which I like. Do you have flashlights? We have got thousands of them, but no batteries. Told you, nothing works here. Torches? We have the capacity to make fire, do we? Man has been doing this since the Stone Age. No need to be sarcastic. um,
Nick, don't do British accents. No, I'm just kidding. I'm back, by the way. Continue.
Well, Paul W.S. Anderson's British, and you said I did a good imitation of him. Come on, man. Don't be like Resurrection and have an inconsistent tone.
Ooh. Yeah, but Anderson talks weird too. So if somehow you're able to channel that, I don't know what part of England he's from, but yeah, it sounded on par. Anyway, continue.
So Ripley's performance in 3, it's just kind of a mixed bag. It has moments when it's really good, but I could just kind of feel her disinterest through the screen. Sometimes it's better and sometimes it's worse. I think it's mostly towards the beginning where no, not even there, because she does do a good job of showcasing she's obviously very torn up inside, and she's very like sad and upset that her surrogate daughter is dead and her surrogate boyfriend is dead. But she does a good job of trying to keep herself contained in front of all these strangers. And yeah, now that you mention it, her sitting in the middle of all the prisoners is a subtle way of her kind of asserting herself and saying, I ain't afraid of you guys. Try me. And also when she tries to fight back against the 4 dudes that are trying to rape her, when she just full on sucker punches that one dude, I'm just like, yes, that's the Ripley I like.
Are we talking about right before the scene ends?
Yeah. Just
the one guy
full on sucker punches this dude. Love it.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and say this because it's something I mentioned to Nick off recording. That actor, for those who don't know, played Desaad in the Snyder Cut of Justice League. Yeah, Peter Gibbs. So that's a fun fact. Anyway, continue.
Pro number 2 is Dylan. I love this dude. Yeah, if you take into mind that apparently he's a murderer and rapist of women. At first, he comes off as being despicable, but over the course of the movie, you really do get the sense that he's conveying that, yeah, I did some shit in my past, but I'm trying to be a better person. I'm just trying to, have my religion and live my life in a place that I call home. It ain't much, but it's ours. And I'm okay with that. And he, of course, turns out to be a total badass too, because the first thing that he does during that attempted rape scene, pull one dude around and just slugs this dude right in the face and sends him flying. Like, oh, damn, dude, okay. And then he grabs a pipe and just starts beating the shit out of these dudes. And he's like, take off. I'm going to stay here with some of the brothers. We got to discuss some matters of the spirit. I was like, okay, dude, have fun with that. And
what he really means is that he's just going to keep on beating the shit out of
him. Yeah. And his chemistry with Ripley does come off as being pretty genuine. Like at first they seem to kind of tolerate each other, but then they like view each other as really good allies. And I felt sad when he sacrificed himself at the very end. But I do like that this is probably the first time that a human has ever tried to just go up hand to hand with a xenomorph. And he probably lasts more than most any other human would last. So that goes to show him he's a tough bastard.
Yeah, I mean, when you got nothing to lose, I guess that's the motivating factor there. I also really like his final speech to the rest of the prisoners. It always gets me a little pumped up.
Yeah.
I also like the dialogue. I also like the dialogue in that scene that Ripley brings up, where she talks about how the company just doesn't give a fuck about anybody except for trying to make the xenomorph a weapon. She brings up the fact that the Nostromo crew, were expendable. The Marines were expendable. That's another one of those great.
It
This
was
is
crew
the grand finale
expendable.
kind of feeling. Yeah.
And also just right before he starts fighting that xenomorph, he's like he goes like this. Oh, fuck you. He's like, okay, this dude's a badass. Yeah, I like Dylan. He's a cool dude. And here's something that me and Trev would have talked about at one point off camera. Had Newt survived, I feel like he would have been Newt's guardian. Whenever Ripley wasn't around, he would have been the one that would have been like looking after Newt and like keeping the other prisoners away from her. Like, you ain't touching her. If you want to get to her, you're gonna have to go through me. And I'm pretty sure you don't want to go through me.
Is he the boss?
Not just that, too, but he's probably just the most physically intimidating guy here.
Oh no, that's what I mean though. It's a whole package. He's the
I
boss,
gotcha.
and he whips it.
Just a shame that she dies. More on that later. Pro number 3 is Clemens. Charles Dance gives a very, very good performance. He's definitely the smartest, aside from Ripley, character in this film. Yeah, he doesn't have the full story, but one of my favorites, or not really like a favorite scene, but just like his progression over the course of the film, he can kind of tell that there's something going on here. There's something like a bigger picture that we're not aware of here. Like he sees Ripley look at the burn on the cryotube, and then when Murphy is diced, he sees the burn mark in the vent grate, and he's like, the fan was blowing, and he sees this. He sees the burn mark, and he's like, you can see him putting pieces together in his head. So he's not stupid. He can tell that okay, something's going on here, and she's not giving me the full picture. But he's not really pushy about it. He wants information, but he's trying to work with Ripley to get her to open up to him and give him some info. And while she definitely opens up to him in a different way, I just like their chemistry. They have a good back and forth witty banter to each other. Like you can tell that it had Clemens lived and had Ripley lived, I think they would have become a thing later in life. And I was really, really bummed when he died. I was like, oh man, come on.
Hey, so this begs the question, because we've already kind of started bringing up a little bit of an alternate scenario. So would you have rather had both Hicks
Totally.
Hicks and Newt both live, or just one?
I think in the end it would have been. I mean, obviously I would have liked both, but even if I could choose, I don't think studios would say, nah, can't have both. I would have rather Newt live over Hicks, if I'm being honest. That may seem a little hypocritical because I love Hicks too, but Ripley got her second chance.
I'm saying that though because again, like I said, Clemens kind of slips in there and becomes
literally
the replacement for Hicks. So if let's say he was the one to go, well, there's a character here that replaces his role in the story. And then he becomes, because Ripley's already the surrogate mom to Newt, then he would become the new surrogate father. And then in that case, Dylan would be the surrogate uncle.
Yep.
And so on and so forth. So.
And yeah, Trev, you could say he literally slips in.
Yeah, my gosh, all these puns. So anyway, aside from the Jacksonite Productions After Dark preview there, no, I'm actually kind of digging this I'm actually kind of digging this alternate version that we're proposing, even if I love the final product as is. Yeah, just a very interesting dynamic if you keep Newt around, and also Clemens. But yeah, anyway, as you were saying.
That's it. I just like the three main characters. You're pro number 4.
My pro number 4 is the Runner, which is our main alien for this movie. I like the design. I like that H.R. Giger was brought back on and was told, or I think he and David Fincher both had the idea to make it more panther or cat-like, which is funny because it comes out of a dog or an ox in the assembly cut. Or he, I'll say he, since the queen is technically the only female of the species. Yeah, I really like this design. I like the brown look to it. I like, it just, I like the sleekness of the design. Although, unfortunately, and I'll just go ahead and mention this here, some of the digital, was it a digital implementation of one of the rod puppets? Is what they did.
It was a puppet in front of a blue screen.
Okay, that's what it was. That doesn't bother me as much as it does some people, but it does look a little wonky.
It's just very experimental. I can see what they're going for. Like, this was technically the very first alien movie to show a xenomorph actually crawling on a ceiling and not just like kind of pulling itself along on pipes right on top of a grate. It's just going full on Spider-Man at this point. So that's cool, and I can see what they were going for, but this just going into the effects. This isn't a con per se, but the blue screen puppet effects. At first, I absolutely hated them, but now that I look at them, they don't look terrible. They're just extremely experimental, and I can see what they were going for with them, but they just don't age all that well.
Yeah, the main thing I would say is they just look a little wonky to the point where people who are not quite as informed on effects as enthusiasts such as ourselves, they would think it was early CGI, but it wasn't. But still, I mean, yeah. Again, it's the design, just the concept of the Runner, and I guess this would also be the place to mention this. I know it's hard to watch, but I think that's one reason why they changed it to this. I do think I kind of lean towards Spike being the Runner's host. Still very, again, hard to watch. It's probably the equivalent. Well, there's more than one equivalent to some of the stuff we see in Resurrection. So here's what I'm trying to say. Really, what works for me in terms of Spike being the Runner's host is the fact that it seems to illustrate certain parts of Dylan's eulogy a lot better, like talking about the innocent, are punished and whatnot.
Hang on. Let me explain it this way. So I hate the scene when Spike is chest bursted. It's sad, upsetting, really distressing, because I don't like seeing dogs or cats any animal really, hurting or in danger. But in the context of this being a xenomorph with its body shape and its design being more cat-like or dog-like and being more quadrupedal in design, it does make more sense that this, and it's also called the Runner, so it does make more sense that it takes on more canine-like physical attributes, because had this alien actually burst out of an ox, you'd think it'd be a bit more bulky and larger rather than being really skinny and small. So that's the only reason I have a slight issue with it coming out of an ox, is that I wish it was a different design, because one issue that I have with the runner is because it looks so similar to the lurker from the original movie. This just kind of feels like Diet Alien, because we're back to one alien, and it also has a smooth head. It just looks like a different version of Big Chap from the original Alien. So if they were going to use the ox, I would have much rather it had been a larger, bulkier version and being built like a brick shithouse. So
you're thinking of like the Kenner toy line where they had different kinds of animal themed aliens. Like they had one for a bull, they had one for a rhino, and they were real burly looking designs.
Yeah, so because they're called xenomorphs, but they don't really explore the fact that they are actually xenomorphs, except in the expanded universe. In the movies, they don't really do anything with that. So I think that would have been cool. But so yes, in terms of design continuity, Spike being the host makes more sense. But because the ox is dead and doesn't make pained, yelping, whining sounds of being chest bursted that Spike makes, that makes me cringe and just makes me lose faith in humanity for subjecting us to a scene like that. Yeah, I still prefer the ox scene.
No, yeah, I got you. I'm kind of going by the studio's logic that your reaction is exactly why they did it, because you're supposed to sympathize or basically feel like you're experiencing what whoever or whatever is being chest bursted is experiencing. I mean, watching Kane for the first time is pretty unpleasant, again, because it's like watching somebody choke, and then it just takes on a whole different level whenever it's an innocent animal. But it's like I said, it kind of factors into. I feel like it illustrates Dylan's, because they juxtapose those scenes where they're doing the funeral for Hicks and Newt, and Dylan gives his eulogy basically. With that chest bursting scene, and just the back and forth, the words of what he's saying, I feel like it fits that better. And also, this scene is left in the assembly cut, and you could say that maybe Spike is just an entity hanging around, but Murphy is mentions Spike, because he thinks he might be hiding off in a hole, and instead it's the runner. He mentions Spike in that scene right before he gets diced.
True, yeah.
So there again, that I guess you could. I don't think it is a continuity error unless you want to make it one. But then you're left thinking, okay, if you haven't ever seen the theatrical cut, then you're wondering, okay, who's Spike? I guess it's a dog. And then he probably, even if we never see him, he probably gets killed off screen by the runner, because it's just killing everything in sight. Especially if it's by itself for a little while. But yeah, final note on the runner, it does plant the seeds, which expanded universe material did elaborate on, for the host of a xenomorph to play into its DNA makeup. So that's another good thing that the runner establishes, is that hybridization that they became known for. So yeah, it's a cool critter. It's a cool monster.
Well, my thoughts real quick on it. I like the design. I like that it's a lot sleeker and much more of a speedster than previous aliens. I like the brown look, makes it more distinct. It also helps it to camouflage with the environment a lot better. So that's cool. It looks slimy. It looks gross. It looks nasty. It looks like a vicious little bastard. And I like the exclusion of the dorsal tubes. I always thought that kind of those would impede its ability to turn its head, because it would just be smacking into its dorsal tubes all the time. And it also plants the seed of having a tail spike, which I didn't really get the sense that previous xenomorphs had tail spikes. But this one definitely does. So that's cool.
Or almost like a tail. Yeah, or almost like a tail blade, because especially in the first movie, it looks like a stinger.
Yeah.
On Big Cat's tail, and then I think they're also like that in Aliens, but I don't remember any really good shots of their tails necessarily.
Nah.
In that particular movie, so yeah, the I like to call it the tail blade is basically planted with this movie.
Yep.
Which is funny because ADI did the effects, and they carried that through with the Alien versus Predator movies as well. Yeah, so my pro number 5 is the cinematography, which I'm not going to say a whole lot about it, but this movie has it's really a lot of the time pretty stunning to look at. I like the scene in the assembly cut, which is the original version of when Clemens finds Ripley. There's just a real good sense of, I guess this would also be production design too, influenced, or the cinematography captures the production design very well.
I have it listed as like creepy setting.
Oh yeah, very ominous, very atmospheric,
very claustrophobic.
Very claustrophobic, yeah, and it's not even on a ship. Which, it still keeps in tune with the themes of Alien, but
which is again why I always like to compare Alien 3 as Diet Alien and Alien Resurrection as Diet Aliens.
Well, yeah, and they even mix it up a little bit, because Resurrection is very Aliens-like, but it takes place on a ship. And then Alien 3 is very Alien-like, but it takes place on a planet, just like Aliens did. So they mix and match in a way. Yeah, also, and this will factor into the Ox thing too, because I mentioned world building. The assembly cut just does a better job of showing the scope of what's going on Fury 16 or 161. Sorry. It just, just like how the Marines were an extra layer to the Alien universe. Just the way this prison planet is captured and what they use, like the oxen and stuff like that, and it's an expansion of that world, and I like it. And a final note, this is a neat little bit of trivia. The cinematographer, the director of photography for this movie, Alex Thomson, no relation because this is an older British gentleman who I think is actually dead now. Alex Thomson also shot Leviathan.
Ooh.
And I remember watching Leviathan and thinking, this reminds me of something that I've seen before, the way it looks. And then I watched Alien 3 not too long after I had seen Leviathan for the first time. And then I noticed it again, and sure enough, I saw the director of photography, and it was the same guy. So small world when it comes to this genre. Yeah, it's just a beautiful looking film, in my opinion.
My quick thoughts. I don't really have much to say, but I like the setting. It's very creepy. It's very ominous. It's kind of gothic. It's dark. It's very atmospheric and creepy, and I can tell they were trying to make the series scary again, despite having the more action feel of the previous movie. The scares were not lost, but slightly decreased. This movie was trying to up the scares back up by making it creepy and dark and atmospheric again. And I think it succeeds 2/3 of the time. But yeah, I like the setting. It's eerie.
I agree. Pro number 6 is the practical effects.
We'll talk about this together. Yeah, because I kind of have two aspects to it. Is the practical effects are very solid, and the gore is also very good too. If you're a big gore hound, well, I'll also say this one too. So, hold up. 2, 3, 4. Pro number 5 is the special effects. Pro number 6 is the good gore. And 7 is the high body count. I'll say one thing about that. if you want to watch a movie that has a pretty high body count, this movie will wet your whistle because there's at least 26 kills in this movie, or maybe like 20, 24 kills in this movie. And yeah, they come pretty frequently. And this movie, I would definitely say, is the goriest of the original 4 Alien movies. Resurrection kind of comes close, but even then, there's a couple moments that are really gory, but this movie overall is very gory. Yeah, this movie has a high body count, and as far as the gore goes, it'll definitely wet your whistle because it's all practical. It's bloody, it's nasty, it's violent, and it's very, very slimy and gross.
Most definitely bloodthirsty. For
Yes. Sure. And the special effects practically are really solid. Trev?
Yeah, I'll just say one little other thing about that because we kind of already elaborated on talking about the runner because that's the main effect here. But no, like there's still some good miniatures here. I like the EEV coming off of the Sulaco. The miniatures for the planet itself, like the different buildings and whatnot. Some of it I think is partially location or studio based, but a lot of it is also miniature. And it's just very well lit. Very again, it also contributes to the atmosphere. Yeah, again, this is something that I like in the theatrical cut in terms of another practical effect. I like seeing the Queen chestburster actually appear. And thematically, what I like about it, aside from actually seeing a different variation on the chestburster, well, yeah, real quick. Also, the assembly cut shows us, unfortunately, from far away, the Queen facehugger. But there's a lot more detailed and better images of it online if you type in Queen facehugger. It's a gnarly looking variation of the facehugger. Not only just the Queen embryo, but it also has an embryo for the guard for the Queen. So that's a nice bit of lore for the xenomorphs.
Yep.
I just wish we were able. I just wish we were able to see this facehugger in a bit more detail. But seeing the Queen chestburster is nice. I like the scene because as she is plummeting to her death, Ripley kind of again has another great FU moment to the alien queen, who is, if you consider this the last movie, she is the last queen, and therefore the species is probably extinct after this. Basically, as she holds the queen as she's falling to her death, it's kind of a "you're coming with me"
Yep.
kind of vibe. And this, yeah, and I just like that whole sensibility to it. And that'll actually lead into my last pro, because I think this actually plays better to full effect in this scene in the theatrical version. I really love the score for this movie. The music,
oh yeah,
Golden Thumb. It's a very emotional in places. I love the kind of soft and sad theme that plays. I think whenever she's reflecting, or whenever they're talking about Newt, whenever it plays, it's just a very melancholy piece of music.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a very epic and stirring. What's the word?
Symphony.
Not necessarily. Well, it is triumphant. Yeah, very symphonic. Very triumphant in certain places, especially at the end there, which also has a little bit of melancholy thrown in there. I guess it might be talked about among fans of his in particular, but I think this score probably deserves a bit more appreciation because I think I might have said this off camera, maybe earlier in the review. Without this score, I don't think the movie would work near as well, because it makes those emotional beats. Well, it's like music in any movie, really. It makes those emotional beats hit. Whether they're bad or good. And it just contributes to the overall experience to watching the movie, or any movie for that matter. But it's something that I would definitely miss if it wasn't here. And yeah, this is definitely one of those soundtracks that I would listen to by itself. Like download pieces from YouTube, or like back in the day buy the CD. That's how much I like it. I actually occasionally listen to different pieces of it from time to time. So yeah, it's a phenomenal score. Good job, Mr. Goldenthal.
Yep.
I liked your Batman scores, although they are a different flavor. Although you can kind of hear similar, types of instruments used there, because that's what composers usually tend to do. The Interview with the Vampire score is also fairly similar to this one, definitely in the Gothic department. But yeah, great score. That's my final pro. And I don't have any cons. I consider a lot of these, I consider there to be a lot of nitpicks, and I think Nick is probably going to elaborate on them, so I'll provide my 2 cents there. Let's do it.
The music, in my opinion, is also very, very good. My favorite piece is the music that plays when Ripley jumps to her death. It's just a very, it's a little sad, but it's just like a final, it's both a fuck you to Wayland, but it's just it conveys, even in death, I win. Fuck you. Triumphant feel. And again, to quote James Rolfe, it's epic. But the rest of the music is very creepy, and it definitely adds to the movie's atmosphere and them trying to make the series scary again and give it a creepy, ominous feel. And also when something scary does happen, like another favorite piece of music of mine is when the runner gives Golic a grin. That music that plays is just like oh, damn, run.
Yeah.
So yeah, the music's great. It's what?
Epic in every sense of the word, really.
It's probably my second favorite score of the first 4 Alien movies. Actually, no, yeah, it is. And to finish up on the special effects, the suitimation is very well done. Alec Gillis and Tom Woodruff Jr. came to work on this movie, and you can definitely tell. And this is when they stuck to the Alien series for quite a while, starting here, and it shows. And is it Tom Gillis? Or no? Is it Tom or Alec that's in the suit?
Tom's always the guy who plays the alien.
Okay.
For the films they did, yeah.
Definitely shows he does a very good job. And finally, the ending chase scene to try to trap the alien is easily the best scene in the film. It's very entertaining. There's lots of carnage and gore and death left and right. But there's also lots of just the POV shots of the alien chasing the dudes. It's fun. And I also like the charisma of a lot of these dudes. There's like, come on, come and get me, you fucker. I love it.
There's even some funny parts too, like whenever Morse runs into 2 different characters, Gregor and
what the fuck?
I forgot the guy.
Don't hold it like that. Hold it like this. I'm gonna kill someone, you fucking moron.
And that's all he does. And then he runs into Gregor later.
And then he dies.
You fucker. Scared me shitless. No, funny. It makes me laugh.
All right, let me get through my cons for Alien 3, because I'm not going to have that much to say about Resurrection. I keep fucking forgetting we're doing a double feature.
Neither am I, though.
Con number 1 is this movie is, in my opinion, imbalancedly paced. There's some scenes that go by relatively well, but then there's a few that just drag. Mostly it's in the second act. Like the first one's a good setup. The third act is a lot of action, but the second one just really waxes and wanes when it wants to be quick, and then it wants to be slow, and then it wants to be quick, and then slow. It's just a little bit of a chore to sit through. Con number 2 is Clemens dying. Really wish he didn't have to die because he was such a good character. Con number 3 is, aside from the first three cast members, the rest of the cast is just there to get killed. Literally just there to get killed, to fill out a body count. It's a good body count. There's lots of kills, but they just have cannon fodder written all over them.
Oh, let me point out another bit of trivia, because I like that. Andrews, the actor, he was also in An American Werewolf in London as one of the people in the bar. So
also playing an asshole there too.
Yep. He is a pretty despicable character. I'll give him that. Well, I won't give him that. It's not a good thing. Anyway, Jenny.
Con number 4 is the death of Ripley. It's an epic scene, yes, but I've just come to realize, and Ryan actually helped point this out for me, I don't like deaths of main characters in film or shows, like randomly, bullshitly killing off Mike in season 8 of Desperate Housewives. Just totally came out of left field and is bullshit. Yeah, Ripley dying, it's sad, and you're just like, oh man, what a shitty fucking life this chick had.
But she saved the universe.
True, yeah, so it's just like a super mixed feeling type thing. On one hand, I have strong feelings for like, okay, yeah, that's like a good fuck you to the bad guys, but on the other hand, it's a strong feeling of, no. Why? What?
It's very bittersweet. That's probably
there
the
you
best
go.
term you could
Yeah.
use for it.
And my last two cons have exactly equidistant to do with each other. The first 25 minutes are very bleak, and the film overall is very bleak.
It's a big kick in the balls.
Yeah, like the opening scene of Terminator Dark Fate. Killing off Newt and Hicks in the first 25 minutes. And watching Clemens have to perform an autopsy on a 12-year-old little girl in gruesome detail. Listening to him using that bone saw to cut open her chest. It's very gut-wrenching, no pun intended. And you're just like, you're numb. You just feel numb the first 25 minutes of this movie. Ugh.
I will say, probably why, for me, it's a good, quote-unquote, double bill, is that it's a very cathartic, opposing experience to Aliens. Aliens is one end of the spectrum, and then this is the other. But there's still, I guess for me, still some good sense of unity there. But yeah, I guess cathartic is the main term that comes to mind describing these elements.
And that's all that the cons that I have for Alien 3. Let's just breeze through Resurrection, because this won't take long.
Oh, no, yeah, not a whole lot. So I have 4 pros for Resurrection.
I have 7, but I just don't have much to say about any of them.
Oh, yeah, me either. So the first pro is the Ripley and Call connection. I feel like this is kind of trying to be a new version of Ripley and Newt. It's kind of emphasized a little bit more in the special edition, because whenever Ripley 8 is being shown flashcards and trying to identify him, there's the one image of the little girl, which, you know, calls back to Newt and Aliens. And also in a way, Call's kind of a combo of Bishop and Newt.
Yep.
If you think about it. So yeah, that's really the function that Call serves. You want me to just go ahead and mention my con with that?
Sure, go ahead.
This kind of plays into the conflicting tone, or like it also deals with characters and the fact that they seem inconsistent. One minute it seems like Call and Ripley are like bonding very strongly, and then the next, it's like they want to kill each other.
Yeah. Now that you mention it,
was
that's
very
something that bugs me too. Like, she hands Ripley the flamethrower and then punches Ren in the face in one scene, and then the next she's like, "Fuck you, we're not leaving him here." He's like, "Where's this coming from?"
Yeah, or even earlier, like demeans her and says that you were grown in a fucking lab, like some experiment. You know, of course, but that's early on when they first meet. But it just keeps on popping up, and you're like, okay, we need to pick one. We need to either have them start to bond, or you know, they just need to be antagonistic with each other. It just, I don't know. It feels weird to me, and it plays into that conflicting tone kind of thing. But whenever they do make connections, they have nice little bits of dialogue, and yeah, it's a good callback to Aliens, which I feel like it was trying to do. Pro number 2 is the practical effects.
Oh yeah.
Again, the studio ADI, Amalgamated Dynamics Incorporated, they're usually, well, they're pretty much always at the top of their game. They bring it every time they do a movie. And yeah, I'll just go ahead and mention a con with this too. This has to do with Xenomorphs in general. The effects that bring them to life are fantastic. They actually, whenever they recreated the head for the Queen, they
Flawless.
got Bob Burns. What's up?
No, the Queen alien is flawless.
Well, I don't like her growing a womb out of nowhere, because that's just like, okay, this is where it gets weird.
I'll get to that.
For me, anyway. But no, yeah, I do really like how they recreated her head. I think they actually resculpted it based on the prop that Bob Burns, like the famous movie prop guy, had from Aliens. They actually sculpted it based on that he provided them for the movie. So that was real neat. But yeah, I'll go ahead and mention my con with that. So I've actually done half of one con. This is a full other con. The Xenos they don't seem like they did in the previous movies.
They're very mellow.
Yeah, they bellow. They're just they're a bit more hefty than they need to be for being just human generated xenomorphs. There's something kind of spindly and kind of agile about the other xenomorphs from the previous movies. They're very deadly creatures, but they're not like, I mean, they always say that the characters in the movies, like especially in Alien 3, they say how huge they are and everything, but they're still kind of light, or kind of
lightweight.
They're sleek kind of creatures, whether they come out of humans or other species. The only exception to this would be like the Pred alien, but then it has predator DNA in it, so that that explains that.
Check your phone, honey.
These guys just seem. What was that?
I was telling Meadow to check her phone about something.
Oh, okay, sorry. No, yeah, they just seem different. And what I put is they seem out of character.
They're not as threatening.
Xenomorphs can have. Yeah, it's just they feel like just a generic rampaging 90s creature feature star instead of a xenomorph, and that's another thing that was kind of off-putting to me. But anyway, back to the pros. Pro number 3 is the humor. This movie is pretty damn funny in places. I'll just go ahead and mention it. Again, goes with like the conflicting tone. I think I already said this. 1 minute, Ron Perlman is blowing away a spider with a gun. Or characters coming up and saying, "Who'd you expect, Santa Claus?" And stuff like that. And then we have moments like whenever Ripley 8 sees her predecessors, and just how disturbing that is. You're going to elaborate on that, Nick, so I won't go too far into that. And then just the newborn itself, not just the way it dies, but it also exhibits kind of that conflicting tone kind of thing where, it's kind of campy in how almost cute it looks, but then it's also like super disturbing.
and super violent.
It's just kind of it's violent. Yeah, it's off-putting. That's the main thing that I'll say. But yeah, other than that, whenever the humor is on point, it's great. I get some pretty good chuckles out of it. And then my final probe, number 4. This is a pretty genre-friendly cast. We got Ron Perlman, we got Brad Dourif. Winona Ryder even has some, sci-fi and horror genre credibility to her.
As little of, well, no, not really little. There's that Witch's Trial movie, and then there's now Stranger Things. Oh, and Dracula.
Beetlejuice, too.
And Beetlejuice.
Yeah, Dracula and Beetlejuice. So, yeah.
And Mr. Deeds.
And also some that, and then there's some that you may not think of right off the bat. Ren is played by J.E. Freeman, and I actually mentioned this in our Tremors 4 review. You wouldn't know it, but he's actually old Fred in Tremors 4.
And then the dude who plays Elgin, he was in The Count of Monte Cristo as the warden of the Chateau d'If, and he was also in the first Crow movie as the main villain, the dude that gets 30 hours of pain and then falls and gets impaled and fucks his sister.
I'm glad you brought him up because I almost forgot. But then there was also another one, DeStefano, or Steven as Nick calls him. He actually also pops up in From Dusk Till Dawn too as a character. So yeah, if you know your genre people, there's a plentiful helping here on display. So yeah, I kind of mixed and matched my pros and cons. I'll just go ahead and wrap mine up so you can go ahead and do yours, Nick. Mainly my big thing with this is that it feels disconnected from the previous 3. Part of that is like the whole setting thing is that it's 200 years after the other 3 movies.
Yeah, that doesn't help.
But the company isn't there. I mean, there's another organization, basically the military, U.S. military. But still, it just feels without them as like that looming villainous presence. It feels, just disconnected. That's the only word that comes to mind. I mean, I've already mentioned the other little bits and pieces of my cons, like the conflicting tone, like the humor is great, but then something disturbing happens like a few seconds later. The xenomorphs, although executed great in terms of their effects,
are very generic.
Xenomorphs and well, even the Queen, she kind of just makes these not squeaky noises, but she just makes different noises. They don't sound like they quote unquote should. So yeah, it's just disconnected. And I guess you would say, even though it is entertaining and it's in different shades, it is kind of unnecessary. It's just kind of unremarkable, as you said, Nick, off camera.
Yep.
That's all I got to say.
Ripley overall, I like the return of Sigourney Weaver, though. Yeah, you can tell that she definitely is phoning it in here, but I still feel like she gives a couple good lines, like the "Who'd have to fuck to get off this boat." That's my friend Grayson's favorite line in this movie. I feel like she was having a little bit of fun with this role. And she also has a couple moments where she's badass. So she's not bad here. The rest of the cast is okay. Like there's a couple, like I love Ron Perlman's character. He's probably the funniest character. And his banter, like he's the asshole you love to hate, but also hate to love. Like his banter with Vreeze, he's just like, if we want to make some decent progress, we got to ditch the cripple. No offense, man. None taken. Vreeze also, he's funny. I'll give you hose, you slammy bastard. Jonah, where are you, you son of a bitch? Get on it, bastard. just like insults the living shit out of Johnner, and Johnner's insulting the living shit out of Vreeze. But when they make it in Earth's atmosphere, he just walks over and eats Vreeze's face, just like, oh, okay. Cool. I don't like watching Ron Perlman kiss another man.
Yeah.
But yeah, Johnner, he's funny as fuck. Literally, apparently there's now people that compare him to George from Rampage. But it doesn't help that the first scene that you see him, he's tossing a knife around and sounding like a damn monkey. Also, can't believe I almost fucked it. Yeah, like you never fucked a robot. He's funny. Yeah, the cast is okay. A lot of them have just cannon fodder or generic written all over them. But when they're funny or they're being badass, they certainly have their moments. The camera work and cinematography for this movie is also done very well. They're shot like kind of edgy music videos almost. Though sometimes the Sam Raimi Evil Dead close-up zoom effects get a little overboard. The cinematography and action camera work is still very, very well done. And speaking of which, the action scenes in this movie are overall fairly entertaining. Kind of the whole second half of the second act and the first half of the third act is just one big long action and chase scene. Though probably my favorite moment in the whole movie is the whole underwater and nest scenes. That's actually kind of gripping. And also for Winona Ryder, that was a difficult scene for her because she nearly drowned when she was 12. And she at first didn't want to do the scene, but she decided, I'll just try to power through it. And she had massive anxiety attacks the entire time that she was doing that. So respect her for trying to respect her for trying to get over that. But yeah, the action scenes are fun. And speaking of which, the humor is also very, very on point when it is on point. There are some moments that are pretty damn funny, in my opinion, like the I can get you off, maybe not off the boat, but, or if you don't want to play basketball, I know some other indoor sports. Or, oh man, you know I can't resist the tall ones. Or, none taken. There are a lot of like good snicker moments throughout this movie. Most of them have to do with Johnner because A, he's such a horn dog, and B, he's just that one asshole that you love to hate and hate to love. And just overall, this chemistry that these mercs have with each other, it is a bit reminiscent of Aliens, just a diet version of that. And it's fun. The special effects are also really, really solid. The practical stuff. The digital stuff, there's very little of it, at least to my knowledge. But even then, most of the digital stuff is the xenomorphs underwater. And I actually think they look pretty decent under there. The one digital shot that I didn't really care for was when the xenomorph jumps out of the water and starts climbing the ladder. You can tell that it's a digital effect and it looks a little cartoony, but they don't use it very much. It's just a couple quick shots. The set design for the nest is really, really good. It looks nasty. It looks goopy and gross. Little too clean because this movie had the biggest budget of the whole series, but still looks good. The practical suits for the xenomorphs look really, really solid. Even more so of a brown color in this than in Alien 3. Though here they're just straight up shit brown. But it looks fine. And when they bleed, their blood is just straight up yellow. So that certainly does stick out in a good way. But then their inner tongues are kind of greenish. So interesting assortment of colors. Yeah, the suits look great. And the Queen Xenomorph, very underutilized. But, okay. When she is on screen, she looks fantastic. Like the main scene where she looks really good is her first reveal. You realize, oh, there's the queen. And there's that long pan shot of the queen's crown, and it looks absolutely stellar. Um, and then, of course, there's the
Oh
newborn.
yeah.
Disturbing death aside, and rushed hybrid human xenomorph idea aside, effects wise, the newborn looks utterly stellar. Very lanky and disproportionate in some ways, but still, it's done in a way that does kind of make it work. And I don't know if it's a he or a she, but the newborn looks goopy and slimy, and it's innocent, but it's also violent. Like the two human kills that it has in this movie, they both have to do with the head. He bites Brad Dourif's head off, and then he crushes Steven's head with his hands. You're just like, God, dude, jeez. Yeah, the effects on this thing look great. Disturbing death aside.
My dad's surprisingly insightful take on it was that he thought that the newborn was probably just Ripley again, or a version of Ripley. And even the screams kind of sound feminine, which makes it even more disturbing whenever they're flying out into space.
Ugh.
But yeah, that's my
I don't like
that's
that
my
scene.
take. It's probably.
And then, of course, there's the failed clone scene. It is disturbing, but I think that was the point. So I got to give them props for that scene. It definitely does. That's probably the best moment of acting from Sigourney Weaver. Like, she's definitely is showcasing, oh my God, these are failed versions of me. I definitely need to kill these things to put them out of their misery. Like, fuck me. Yeah, props to Sigourney Weaver in that scene. She's really given it her all in that performance. Any more cons you want to talk about?
No, I think we about covered most of them in some form or fashion. Oh well, no, I will say, yeah, the failed clone scene is probably Sigourney's best bit of acting in the movie. Well, also when the newborn dies. But other than that, I really feel the phone-in bits whenever she says bits of dialogue. You could say that maybe that's her playing into the inhuman aspect of the clone. But whenever she's sitting there at the table with right after she's introduced, Getterman and Rin, just the way she says some of the lines is very monotone, and
she'll breathe.
There's not much.
You'll die.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not much inflection in there, and that's definitely an example of where I would say it was phoned in or just by the numbers.
Yep.
So, yeah.
So, let's see. I have 7 cons. Con number 1 is these first 2 are kind of nitpicks, or the first 3 are kind of nitpicks, but this movie is definitely a retread of Aliens, even though, yeah, as Trev pointed out, it's like what's the word? Fuck,
I called it mixing and matching.
Okay, sure, we'll call it that. It's Aliens on a ship, but it still definitely has that action. Like, all the horror is totally gone. This is just a straight up action movie with aliens. It just very much is like retreading Aliens for a majority of the film, which isn't so bad per se because Aliens is my favorite, but it just feels a bit standard at this point. I hate a lot of the names in these characters in this movie. Like, who names a man Christy? What the fuck kind of name is Elgin? What kind of name is Getterman? What's up with Johnner? Why can't you just call him John or even Johns? Call the fuck? This movie's cast just has really fucking weird names. And then the music score for this movie is just very generic and bland. This is easily my least favorite music score of the original 4 movies. It's not bad, it's just very unremarkable, like the movie itself.
It picks up a bit whenever they reference little bits of music from Alien and Aliens. But other than that, I concur.
There's other characters in this movie that are also just very bland and both annoying. Like Brad Dourif's seemingly his main squeeze. She's just kind of the whole movie, she just looks sad and scared and useless. Elgin's main squeeze, I think that was Hillard. Useless and annoying and just very one note, sad, scared, and useless. And then there's just a whole bunch of cannon fodder. Oh, General Perez. I can't stand this dude. He's feels like he's trying to be like awkwardly funny for a majority of the movie, which just makes me wonder how the hell is this dude a general? Because there's so many movies like his facial expressions and his body mannerisms, and also him getting mouth bitten in the back of the head. He just like pulls out a piece of his brain and he's like, dude, you can't act.
He's a cartoon character.
There you go, yeah. Next, I hate this movie's ending. Well, like, admittedly, when Ripley gets taken by the aliens, that's when the movie does lose me. But the cliffhanger ending of them arriving on Earth and then they just cut to black and then we'll never have this be resolved, not counting comics. It just frustrates the shit out of me. You're just like, oh, now you gotta bring xenomorphs to Earth. Like, what the fuck? The underused alien hybrid concept, it's here, but I don't feel like nothing is really done with it. They just like these aliens are even more so hybrids of humans and xenos. Okay. And then at the very end, the queen alien grows a womb, and then you're just like, okay, this is kind of weird. But then she dies. And then nothing's really done with it. And you're like, that was pointless. Okay.
She literally gets bitch slapped.
Yeah, very much so. It just kind of feels like it was too little, too late to make this movie feel more distinct, but I just don't think it works. And also, Ren as the last minute human villain just doesn't really work for me. He gets a good death and probably the biggest what the fuck moment of the whole series. But other than that, he's just a generic evil mad scientist. Whoop-de-doo. Not really much is done with him. So that's all I have to say about Alien Resurrection. Just not really much, because Resurrection is just such an unremarkable movie. So, final thoughts on Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection, Trev?
For me, Alien 3 is, at least personally, my ideal ending for the original Alien films. I feel like those 3 are the classics. Even if 3 has a fair share of problems that make it polarizing for some people, I still really like it a whole lot. It resonates with me. I can't really explain it. It's just a feeling. So yeah, whenever I want to watch the Alien movies, I usually always watch the first 3 in some form or fashion. Maybe not all at once, but over the course of a week or so. Resurrection, it's just kind of hard for me to want to watch it. I actually my rewatch was a week ago for that one, and I thought, well, that's probably enough. But it does have its fans, and I can see why they like it. I mean, there's some people who like it, and probably this was back whenever I was in school. There were people who had watched that but hadn't seen the other ones. And of course, I'm always that guy going, well, you're missing out by not seeing the other ones, which are much better. But yeah, I digress. For me, Alien 3, is going to be a pretty solid 8. If I let the problems get to it, it's still a 7.5. And Resurrection is going to be I'm going to give it a generous 6.
My final thoughts on Alien 3, it does have problems, and it, in some ways, is the black sheep of the original 4 movies, but I still think it is a pretty decent movie. It is slightly underrated. It's definitely a mood piece, and you have to very much so be in a certain mood to watch Alien 3. But if you are in the right state of mind, you could probably really dig Alien 3 because it's got some good ideas, good kills, and a good high body count, and some good effects, and a nice finality. So if they wanted to make Alien a trilogy, would have ended on a pretty decent note. Alien Resurrection is just there. Kind of like with Trev, it's hard for me to find a reason for me to rewatch Resurrection because it's just such an unremarkable movie. It just went for entertaining popcorn trash, and it succeeded, but it's nothing more than that. It's the barest bones of entertaining popcorn trash, which is weird coming from me because usually I like entertaining popcorn movies. I prefer those over Oscar-worthy dramas or some shit like that. Those movies just don't interest me. I like myself some 90s action movies, but this one is a 90s action movie, but it's just kind of there. It never really resonated with me. It's not a bad film by any means, but it's just there. And I will be giving both Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection a 7 out of 10. It's kind of a generous 7 for Alien 3, but I'm going to give it that anyway because neither of these films are bad. They are lacking in certain ways, but they also give some stuff for people in the right state of minds in others. Oh, did you? Oh, wait, no, you gave it a 6, a generous 6. Yep, that'll be the end of our Alien and Predator re-review series. Tune in next week for a re-ranking of the Alien and Predator series for me and Trev. Definitely going to be excited for that. Trev, you got anything to plug?
My audio has been shipped off. I'm just waiting on him to put it all together, but I have contributed to Daikaiju Spacezilla's review of Godzilla 1954, as well as its American cut, Godzilla King of the Monsters from 1956. That's somewhere down the pipeline. I'm leaving it at his discretion, but I have for sure completed my work on that. And I think this re-review series has inspired me to finally write something again. I'm not going to say what, but I'm going to be working on that this coming weekend. And yeah, that should be coming along on the Fictosphere at some point. I just have to get the go-ahead and whatnot. But yeah, I have enjoyed this review series, and I'm glad it's
me too.
kind of inspired me to. It's kind of inspired me to maybe it would never actually happen on film, but it is something that I would like to see happen. So yeah, definitely for sure, Daikaiju Spacezilla's video that's coming, and there might be something from the Fictosphere coming too. So there we go.
Alrighty, so post your comments down below and let me know what you think. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button and share this video with your friends. Look forward to the next video, and as always, go out and if you're on a desolate prison planet, try to get off it. But make sure it's not on a spaceship that's all of a sudden 200 years in the future with some really dumbass mad scientists on it. And I will see you guys in the next video.